It's such a privilege to be here today in partnership with Stolen Youth by sharing an original song called What If. My hope for the next few minutes is to create a space for all of us to think about children who are being dehumanized through horrible sex trafficking. Beyond that, I hope that we are stirred to come alongside Stolen Youth and support them so that they can in turn save the lives of so many children.
What if we walked a mile in their shoes, assumed a little less, tried to feel what they feel? What if we opened our hearts a little more, asked ourselves, what if this was me? 'Cause they are just like you and me, trying to find a way to be in this world and live in peace. 'Cause they are just like you and me, trying to find a way to be in this world and live in peace. Is that a crime? What if the story changed today? It's you on the other side. What would you do? How far would you go for the ones you love, to give them the best you can? 'Cause they are just like you and me, trying to find a way to be in this world and live in peace. 'Cause they are just like you and me, trying to find a way to be in this world and live in peace. Is that a crime? It's time to believe that there's enough to go around for everyone that lives. The table is large for all of us to sit and feast in this beautiful place. 'Cause we are all in the same place, trying to find a way to be in this world and live in peace. 'Cause we are all in the same place, trying to find a way to be in this world and live in peace. And it's not a crime. So what if we walked a mile in their shoes, assumed a little less, tried to feel what they feel?
If there's anything we're learning from these times, it's how to live with uncertainty. This is not something many of us are good at or used to doing. It requires us to dig deep into ourselves and our faith, not necessarily as a religious or spiritual undertaking, but as a means to believe that things can and will change despite the current circumstances. Not knowing when we can be together again has been one of the greatest challenges for me this last year. But I've also found a renewed sense of purpose and clarity of values amidst all of this. I believe we survive and even thrive when we trust that people are inherently good, that we have the power to change what isn't working, and that together we can do anything. I'm Patty Fleischman, one of the co-founders of Stolen Youth. Thank you so much for being here today. One of the highlights of my year is when 900 of us gather for our Not on Our Watch luncheon to hear the transformational stories of survivors and community members dedicated to ending child sex trafficking in Washington state. While I will miss looking out at the ballroom at all the familiar faces, the stories you will hear today are as inspiring and powerful as the ones we've heard in person in years past. The need to provide safety, security, and well-being for these young people is even more urgent. COVID has certainly challenged everyone's sense of security, but it has particularly challenged our most vulnerable youth. As I speak to you right now, there are more young people at risk on the streets than ever before. The pandemic sent us all home to quarantine, but what about those that don't have a home? For many of the young people we advocate for, there is no home, or home became too dangerous, so they risked their lives out on the streets. Stolen Youth's mission is to end child sex trafficking in Washington state. We are a fundraising organization with a fundamental core of activism. We are fiercely dedicated to collectively harnessing the power of hope into action. 2020 asked us to look within, to decide what's most valuable to us. How do we want to live our lives? Who do we want in our pod communities? What privileges do we have? And how will we contribute to making this country a more equitable place for everyone? We have the ability to get every youth off the streets. We have the giving power to provide every trafficked youth the services they desperately need and deserve to thrive. We have the power to change lives. This is the power of us, the ability to stay in the light and believe that we can make the world better. This is our foundation. This is what makes enduring the uncertainty possible. And we don't just endure, we jump in and we create the change we want to see. Thank you again for being here today. Thank you for showing up, for your compassion, your incredible generosity. We're so grateful. And I look forward to the day that we can all see each other again soon. Thank you.
Two years.
2 years is 730 good nights.
2 years is 698 breakfasts with mom.
2 years is 1,476 I love yous.
104 Saturdays.
360 trips on the bus.
2 years.
2 years is 463 bike rides.
260 nights talking with my best friend.
13 amazing sunsets.
It's 5 camping trips.
2 last days of school.
2 first days of summer.
1 graduation.
When you're young,
2 years is a lifetime.
In our 8 years of work,
Stolen Youth has never been put to the test like it has in 2020. One of the most tragic fallouts from this year is that more youth are vulnerable to trafficking. Those who buy and sell these youth know how to exploit lack of shelter, food, material items, or a lack of attention and love. The one thing 2020 hasn't done is deter us. Thanks to those who invest in our work, there has been an increase in the identification of the victims of child sex trafficking, and more robust services are available to care for their unique needs. Resources and education are available to high school students to help keep themselves and friends safe. Group counseling is offered to dissuade those who buy sex. Laws are being passed that ensure that these youths are seen as victims, not criminals. And those who buy and sell children for sex are facing more aggressive penalties. But the steady march of progress always hits barriers when there's a void of information. The nature of this hideous crime is that it's hidden from view by exploitative and manipulative adults, even if it's happening right in our own backyard. This makes it difficult to get an accurate count of the victims out there. In Washington state, it is estimated that there are between 13,000 to 15,000 youth surviving homelessness on their own. 1 in 3 of these youth will be approached by a sex trafficker, often in the first 48 hours on the streets. We know these numbers increased in 2020 due to job loss and youth running away from abusive homes during quarantine. The data we do have paints a very distinct picture of who this crisis disproportionately affects. The FBI reported that 60% of children rescued from sex trafficking were involved in the foster care system. And in King County, while African Americans make up only 6.2% of the population, 45% of trafficked youth are from Black communities, and 56% are youth of color. Despite the impact of macro-level issues like systemic racism, we must remember that these human rights violations are committed by individuals. In 2019, Stolen Youth funded the technology behind a sting operation that revealed an estimate of up to 25,000 potential buyers on one website alone in a 24-hour period. Often, they are those in positions of privilege. 73% of buyers are white men. Law enforcement puts a considerable dent in this activity. But poverty, abuse, homelessness, and racial inequities continue to work in the favor of the perpetrators. Over time, Stolen Youth's continued investment in education will curtail demand, and more young men will understand that a child cannot consent to being bought and sold for sex, and that permanent harm is done to a human that is exploited in this way. Through community advocacy, policies, and legislation, we can achieve our vision of a future where no child is at risk of being used and exploited, where they can have the childhood they deserve.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Lee Curtis, and I'm here to talk about the power of passion. Passion has been what has driven me my whole life. It brought me into my marriage and my family. It brought me into my career, my work as an author, as an advocate for others. It is the driving force of, I believe, all of our lives. And the Stolen Youth mission could not need your passion and mine more than ever at this moment. It is my passion that drove me to the story of Zeffie Trevino, who's a 16-year-old girl who was trafficked and is being charged with murder, even though she did not pull the trigger or cause the death. She is being charged, and she was a victim of trafficking. So I'm glad we're here together. We have a lot of work to do. It could be any one of our children, our neighbors, our friends. This is a crucial moment in our lives, and I hope that you will support and defend and bring your personal passion to this cause. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. Please stay tuned and listen to how we all can make this transformative change for others. Thank you for listening. Peace.
I started working with TD in January of 2019 as her CSEC advocate. I had previously worked with TD as a youth counselor at a different organization. Since she was 14, I've watched TD move from placement to placement with no safe place to call home. During one of our sessions, TD looked at me and said, "Chelsea, no one wants to adopt a Black girl who's been labeled as a prostitute and a runaway. People want babies, not damaged girls who have behavioral issues." My heart broke for her when she said this because I knew how she felt in the core of my being. I felt helpless. TD is so much more than a survivor of CSEC. She has a singing voice that will bring you to tears. She does hair, makeup, and nails better than any professional that I know. She writes poetry that will pull at your heartstrings. She has a contagious laugh and a heart of gold. But the system had failed her. She is a stolen youth. At the age of 16, after running away from her 20th shelter placement of that year, she had met her trafficker through a friend. He had promised everything that she had never had: love, safety, belonging, clothes, money, food, a home, and family. This is how these perpetrators prey on their victims, through playing on their vulnerabilities and naivete. TD was being trafficked on North Aurora from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., being given crack and powder cocaine to make it through the night. Her trafficker would beat her if she didn't make a certain amount. I would meet her at a Starbucks in the afternoons to safety plan, support her, and provide a non-judgmental space for her to process. Trauma and healing is a journey. Advocacy is about walking alongside a person every step of the way and supporting them unconditionally. Some days are long and leave you feeling devastated, due to the weight of the broken systems that are in place. The moments of hope make the work worth it. The moments where the youth takes that first step, getting a job, going back to school, getting into therapy, start believing they are worth more, that there is hope for a bigger future. TD has since left her trafficker, gotten a job at Nordstrom Cafe, and completed her GED. She is looking into transitional housing programs and trying to get her own place. Most importantly, she is focusing on the dreams she has always held close to her heart. She wants to go to beauty school, which is completely covered by DCYF. We are working on the steps to getting her there. TD has struggled with leaving the life fully, but she is resilient, a survivor, a warrior. I am honored that I get to know her and have the privilege of being in her life.
I'm Jenna Dimmick, and I am the program coordinator for the Safe Jobs Collaborative with Businesses Ending Slavery and Trafficking, or BEST. One of the most serious barriers for people exiting a trafficking situation is they have no income. So in 2017, BEST approached Stolen Youth to fund the Safe Jobs Collaborative. Working with Youth Care and REST, or Real Escape from the Sex Trade, the collaborative strives to create county-wide access to employment. This year, Youth Care sent a youth, Tyler, to a job readiness workshop hosted by BEST and Waldron Consulting. Later on, after a job interview, Tyler said, "At the end of the interview, they told me that I was hired. I think that the skills that I learned during the workshop and the resume that I built really helped me get the job." It allowed me to move into my very own newly renovated studio apartment, just walking distance from work. The Waldron staff created a training space that was safe and comfortable, and they helped create a clear road to success. Thanks to the generous support from Stolen Youth, we're able to fund this important work, assisting survivors and those at risk of being trafficked and finding safe employment opportunities so they can begin rebuilding their lives. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David. Recently, my family and I experienced a scary close call with an online predator. I'm here to tell you my story today in the hopes that it might prevent you and your family from becoming victims, because any family could fall prey to this problem. Several months ago, my ex-wife called me and said that she had found inappropriate conversations and pictures on our 15-year-old daughter's cell phone. These were conversations with a boy who was trying to convince her to come meet him in person. This boy was not someone that we knew, and these were clearly inappropriate, sexually related conversations. This raised a red flag for us and pushed us into action. My ex-wife contacted local authorities and the FBI, and I called Stolen Youth, an organization I've been involved with for several years since I moved to Seattle. Stolen Youth put me in touch with the Polaris Project, who specializes in immediate responses to situations like this. The authorities confiscated my daughter's cell phone, laptop, and tablet and launched an investigation. They determined that this boy was actually an older man posing as a teenager online to try and lure teenage girls to come meet him in person. Thankfully, we caught this early enough and intervened. My daughter has been receiving counseling, and we've taken full advantage of the resources made available by Stolen Youth and other similar organizations. I've been involved with the Stolen Youth organization for several years. I'm fully aware of this type of problem, and yet I never thought that it would happen in my family, but it did. So please, educate yourselves, educate your family and your children. Support Stolen Youth and the other organizations that fight this problem. Know what resources are available to you and how to use them if necessary. And most of all, stay diligent and stay safe.
On March 13th, 2020, we went into lockdown. Stolen Youth's annual Not on Our Watch fundraiser was canceled, and we had no choice but to step back and wait for things to pass. It'll be over in a week, we said. Maybe 2 weeks? Definitely by the summer. But as we know, the entire world changed for the long term. We thought the pandemic would come with one silver lining, that the shutdown could mean fewer youth being trafficked. The exact opposite was proven to be true. More young people have lost their legitimate employment, can't pay rent or utilities, can't buy food or diapers, and are terrified that they have no choice other than to return to their trafficker. Kids quarantining in abusive homes have opted to run away. More kids are spending unsupervised time online, vulnerable to predators. And the providers trying to help are struggling with a massive demand for services in the face of a scary disease. With the cancellation of our 2020 luncheon, the risk was significant that Stolen Youth would not be able to support the programs, services, and jobs that our supporters' past investments made possible. Now, it's no doubt you've heard the phrase, "we're in this together," once or twice over the course of this pandemic, whether in service of preserving our children's education or lifting up healthcare workers. Community is the most valuable fuel we have to keep us going through this. Support for trafficked youth and the prevention of future abuse is no different. The fight only continues through community support, and you came through. In April, Stolen Youth announced its emergency fund to help our coalition weather the pandemic. Thanks to you, in a few short weeks, we raised more than $200,000 that we directed towards COVID-19 related needs. With the funds, we supported youth shelters, purchased laptops to help resident youth keep up with their educations, funded the purchase of blankets, food, and baby items. We supplemented rent. We helped pay tuition and met many, many more unmet and basic needs that were suddenly exacerbated due to the pandemic. This fund helped us grant and donate more than $800,000 to organizations across the state. In addition to our coalition partners, Youth Care, Seattle Against Slavery, OPS, BEST, CCYJ, and REST. New recipients include One Room in Okanagan County, Innovation's Human Trafficking Collaborative in Olympia, and Scarlet Road in the Kitsap Peninsula. Stolen Youth also collaborated with additional King County organizations to help ensure that the infrastructure built so carefully to support trafficking survivors didn't crumble. But as we know, keeping crisis at bay isn't enough. The system of racism and inequality that perpetuate child sex trafficking don't stop for a pandemic. Your support has also allowed us to back proactive measures against future exploitation. We've invested in a program that helps trafficking survivors secure opportunities with companies like UPS that are committed to employing these youth, often giving them the first gainful employment of their lives. We are also proud to fund 4 advocates for commercially sexually exploited youth. Each advocate works alongside the youth to design a plan and goal to not only escape their trafficking situation, but also to become self-sufficient through job training, education, and development of other skills. By supporting these 4 positions in King County, we are helping hundreds of youth transition to stable lives with the hope for a bright future. You continue to prove that these children aren't alone, that there is someone fighting for them when they can't fight for themselves. It's what we do at Stolen Youth. We harness the power of our community to do amazing things, but we all know that the struggle continues. We need you to walk alongside us to ensure our community doesn't turn a blind eye to child sex trafficking, but instead, we collectively use our talents, influence, and treasure to prevent the trafficking of not only children under our roof, but the children down the street, the children in other neighborhoods, and the children we will never know. Thank you.
There are so many imperatives in our world, so many issues that have come to our attention. And with all of this focused attention, the issue of child sex trafficking hides out of sight in back alleys, dark streets, and behind closed doors. Stolen Youth is a beacon that exposes what's lurking in the shadows and guides young people out of the darkness and into the safety of rehabilitation, opportunity, and new life. I had the great honor of working on the film Sold, a film that ignited a global movement to end trafficking and was the catalyst for the creation of Stolen Youth. It was while making that film that I learned of the unimaginable horrors facing vulnerable youth. Now, I am a mother of a daughter and 2 sons, and I cannot imagine the terror that any parent would live through if this happened to their child. Our children are protected by us, but the vulnerable, whether on our streets or across the world, are susceptible to predators that lurk, waiting for their moment to pounce. We hold that power that can stop them before they pounce. Today is about the power of us to change lives, the power of us to treat all children as if they are our own, the power of us to set impossible, even audacious goals, the goal to end child sex trafficking. It is not accidental that we're attending this event together. We're here because we care, because we live with hearts wide open, and because we believe we have the power to right the wrongs and heal injustices. Raising healthy, thriving, and safe young people is a mandate. They are the future. We are their hope. We are their guides. We are their lifelines. Together, we have the power to save hundreds of lives right now with the urgency and dedication we've heard about today. Please join me in supporting Stolen Youth. These vulnerable youth are counting on us. Thank you.
My name is Renee. I was born here in Washington to my Korean mother and my West Indian father. My parents divorced shortly after I was born, and I spent my childhood going back and forth between them or my grandmother in New York. There was always an undertone of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse with each move. When I was in my preteen and teenage years, it became apparent to social services that there was a physical and emotional abuse going on, at which time I was put into foster care. After getting moved from one foster home to another, a family finally gave me a little bit of stability and by getting licensed to keep me. Unfortunately, by the time this happened, I was already a broken teen with zero self-esteem and had sabotaged the relationship by acting out and pushing all the boundaries. During this time, I had become very promiscuous, chasing after the love and affection and belonging I had deeply craved, but I never received. Soon after being kicked out of the foster home, I met a trafficker right on the corner of 3rd and Pine in front of the McDonald's. He portrayed a glamorous world of money, power, and control over men or buyers of sex. He told me, well, since you're just giving it away for free, you might as well get paid for it. And I believed him. I wanted that love so desperately. I was only 16 years old. He said, just give me 30 days to show you what we can do, and if you don't like it, you can go home. And within a blink of an eye, I was on Pacific Highway turning my first trick, my first sex act. And then I was put out on Aurora. 2 days after I turned 17, he took me to San Diego. My first night in San Diego was when everything became real to me. It was nothing compared to Seattle. There were dozens of girls my age and pimps everywhere I turned. I remember thinking,
this is my first night. I can't go home without any money. So I broke one of the rules, jumped into a car of a man who acted like he was going to either help or pay me. Instead, he put a knife to my neck and violently raped me. This is the violent reality of life on the streets. The daily trauma, terror, and coercion young people are exposed to. I remember sobbing. I just want to go home. I don't want to do this anymore. I was terrified and trapped. And my trafficker told me I couldn't go yet. He said, if you had listened to me, this wouldn't have happened to you. You need to be a woman of integrity and character and stay true to your word. What will you do if you go back home? What man will want you now? Are you gonna go back to foster care? I felt hopeless. 30 days turned into 3 years of being trafficked across California, Arizona, Utah, Hawaii, and Nevada. See, this is how traffickers get their victims to stay with them. This is the mind control that they have over you, selling you a dream of love, belonging, acceptance, and glamour. Instead of that dream, for the 3.5 years I was with him, I was beaten, robbed, raped, and lost more and more of myself with each sex act as I was forced and coerced to perform. I felt ashamed, guilty, and confused. I would ask myself, why did my life turn out this way? Who will ever love me now? How will I ever get out? After I got pregnant with my son, my trafficker became more and more abusive, and I began to realize that he was a drug addict and alcoholic. I finally had the courage to leave him. However, I went straight to another trafficker who I thought would protect me. During this time, my son was kidnapped by a family member who had also been my abuser. Because of the abuse I had endured from this person and the immediate control and manipulation of my current trafficker, I was too scared to fight to get him back. Little did I know that my life was about to become much more terrifying. My trafficker brought home an underage girl, a 14-year-old. He brought her home to work with me, even though I attempted to warn him several times. Soon I was facing charges of kidnapping, pimping, and pandering, and taking a minor across state lines for the purpose of prostitution, among dozens of others. The FBI took everything I had and put me in jail on the day I was going to get an abortion with my second child. I stayed in jail for 8 months. And this is where I finally began to hear this still, quiet voice of God. I was so hurt from the physical, emotional, sexual, and even spiritual abuse that I had endured since childhood. I was mad at God. How could he have let this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? I got out of jail, I had my beautiful daughter, and began to turn my life around. I got a job, my own place, and I began to learn to live life on my own. Unfortunately, I continued the pattern of going from one relationship to another, and I still found myself searching for something to fill the void in my soul. I fell into a deep depression. I felt lonely, helpless, and I had suicidal thoughts. I thank God for my kids, because if I didn't have them, I might have killed myself. So I finally decided to seek professional help and go back to the only place that I knew would save me. When I came to Hope Place, it's a women and children's shelter, I realized I had never faced nor recognized the deep pain and brokenness that I was feeling. I needed deep healing, and while attending classes there, I learned about the patterns of abuse and the toll that it had taken on my life. I learned about safe people and how to be a safe person. Through trauma counseling, I was able to identify the roots of my pain, and everything began to make sense. I moved into transitional housing with my kids, now 4, and decided to apply for a job in nonprofit to help people just like me and my kids. I also wanted to work with an agency who helped youth get out of the life. After researching local anti-trafficking agencies, I was invited to speak at an awareness event. For the first time ever, I shared my story out loud to a room full of strangers. The next defining moment of my life was when Amanda Hightower, the executive director at REST, made a beeline to talk to me at this event. REST is an organization supported by Stolen Youth where victims and survivors can go for holistic healing and support. To know that they are worthy and deserving of love. It was exactly what I had prayed for while I was in the life. I knew that I had found a safe space with REST. I became a mentor, and in 2013 was invited to sit on the board of directors. In my current job, I am the lead community health worker, assisting low-income and homeless individuals and families who need support accessing their healthcare needs. Because of my role as a community health worker, I am constantly exposed to secondary trauma, and that kept me in a constant state of chaos. It's all I knew. I still held on to guilt, shame, self-loathing, and I believed deep down that I didn't deserve to be happy or loved. My suicidal thoughts began to scare me. I was wearing so many masks that I felt like a fraud. I also acknowledged that in order for me to truly heal, I needed to face those years I spent in the life. It was too scary to work on those 7 traumatic years I was in the life. But I took the deep dive and I completed almost 200 sessions of intensive trauma therapy last year. I now believe that I am worthy. I believe that I am enough. And now I know I have a light so bright within me that all the darkness that was out to destroy me will not succeed. I'm a survivor. It took me years to finally confront the terror and trauma I experienced as a child and as a trafficked youth. To stop blaming myself for things that were completely out of my control. Had there been an organization like Stolen Youth and REST, my whole life trajectory would have been so different. The unfairness of how long it takes to recover from something I didn't sign up for breaks my heart. Even still, I am so grateful for Stolen Youth and organizations like REST who give me hope that more youth will have a place to go to be seen, heard, honored, and loved. That one connection saves lives. Thank you for being here today.
So